Welcome back to Z-Speed, and thanks for tuning back in. Have you ever gone to change the oil in your 4th Gen CRV and found oil all over the filter itself and their surrounding area? Well, that's a problem with your oil housing gasket itself. We're going to show you how to replace that with a simple part you can pick up from your local auto parts store and do it yourself. So if you're interested in that, just stay tuned. So before we can gain access to the oil housing filter gaskets themselves, we'll have to remove the oil and the oil filter itself. So that means you're going to need either ramps or jack stands to elevate the front of your CRV. I'm going to use ramps here. You use whatever you have available. Then we can remove the oil and the oil filter. Now, before we start to drain the oil, I wanted to give you my tip of the day, and that is to use your old shower curtain liners to place underneath the vehicle before you drain and fill your oil. I've used these for quite a long time, and it really keeps your driveway or your garage or whatever area you're working on nice and oil free. So when you're done with the job, you never know anything ever happened in that area. Now, this is just a side note, but I'm going to try this Valvoline Restore and Protect. I've heard some pretty good stuff about this. I'm using the 020 weight, and after 4 oil changes, I've heard that this can remove a lot of oil varnishing that you might have inside your engine. We bought this CRV used with over 100,000 miles on it, and it wasn't maintained the best, and so I'll be reviewing this product later on. So to begin this job, we're going to remove the little undershroud, the metal part right here that we're looking at to gain access to the drain plug and the oil filter itself. But I wanted to show you some more symptoms of a leaky oil housing filter gasket. You can see that I've got oil dripping underneath this little panel that we're about to remove. Obviously, you shouldn't have any oil dripping down here at all. And not only is it dripping around this pan area right here, or this undershroud area, it's actually worked its way back along the bottom of the frame here and all the way down the passenger side of the frame rail. Now, Mrs. Z-Speed travels about 80 miles to work each way, about 3 or 4 days a week, and you can see as the oil pressure builds here, it causes the leak to get even worse. So it ends up, when you're doing freeway travel, spraying all underneath the vehicle itself, and it's coated the actual frame rail down here on the passenger side. So if you've got anything looking like this underneath your CRV, you can be guaranteed that your oil housing gaskets are pretty much shot or on their way out. So that's another good symptom and sign. Okay, to get started, we're going to go ahead and drain the oil and remove the oil filter like we talked about earlier. And there's a little aluminum under panel here, just held on by 4 Phillips bolts here. You don't have to remove the whole undershroud, just this piece right here. That's all we really need to remove to gain access to our little oil filter housing gaskets. So that's the good news. You don't have to remove this whole plastic undershroud, just the part that you would normally do to gain access to your oil pan and your oil filter, like you usually do when you change your oil. So remove all 4 of these bolts, and then the little aluminum under panel will slide out and you're ready to go. So let's go ahead and drain the oil now. It's going to be a 17 millimeter socket for your wrench to break your drain plug loose. Mine comes off pretty easily here. And now we're just going to remove the drain plug and let it all drain out. You want to sit there for a little bit and make sure that everything's out of the oil pan, because when we're done with that, we're going to go ahead and place the drain plug back in with a brand new crush washer, of course, and you're going to go ahead and torque it down. Main reason we're going to put the plug back in now is because we don't want any oil dripping on us while we're working on the oil housing filter gaskets. Okay, next up, we're going to remove the oil filter itself. You're just going to break that loose and then unscrew it and then let it drain for a little bit. Be careful with that. As you're about to see, I lost my grip and the oil filter kind of splashed into the pan and kind of sprayed oil everywhere. Don't do that right there, whatever you do. But once you remove it, let it take a break and let it drain for a little bit, because you don't want any oil dripping out on you while you're working on this thing. So give it a little bit to drain out, and then I'm going to shove a little paper towel into the bottom of this oil housing unit so that it doesn't drip on us while we're working underneath the car. Okay, now we're looking straight up at the oil housing unit itself. On the left is a 12mm bolt. You can see right here, I'm going to point to it, and that needs to be removed. So that one right there, and there's one on the opposite side that's actually hidden behind this metal brace right here, which is held on by two 14mm bolts. One's attached to the oil pan and one's attached to the downpipe / front pipe connection right there. It's got a nut and bolt up on top, but then there's just a bolt down here. So to get to that bolt on the oil housing unit behind this brace, you'll have to remove the brace first. Piece of cake, it comes right out, no problems with that, and then we can access the bolt behind there. So I'm gonna go ahead and break the brace loose now. So it's kind of hard to get the camera in here, so I'll be breaking bolts loose without actually filming that part, so I can get the camera in here and show you exactly what I've done. But you can see I've already broken this 14mm bolt loose. That's the bottom of the brace, and then I put it back into the hole so I didn't lose it. And then up top, I broke the 14mm bolt and nut loose. You can see I just kind of let it hang here, or you can completely remove it out of the vehicle, whichever you want to do. I think I ended up taking it out later. And then I broke a 12mm bolt on the other side of the oil filter housing right here. You can see there's a bolt missing, and right above it there's another bolt that needs to be released. And that bolt is by far the hardest one to remove. But let's switch over to the easy bolt, the one on the left hand side. I can show you myself taking that one out with a 12mm extended socket and wrench right here. It's pretty simple, a little bit of torque involved. I don't have the exact torque numbers, but when you go to put these bolts back in, all three of them, just make sure you hand tighten them nice and tight. You don't have to go crazy with the torque, but you want them nice and tight. So you can see it wasn't too much torque. I was able to break it loose, and now I'm going to go ahead and spin the bolt out, and that's what the bolts look like. They're all very similar in size. Okay, let's go back to the right side of the oil housing unit itself, and we're talking about the third bolt, the one that's above the one that we've already removed earlier. And that was pretty simple. The right and left bolt were super simple to remove, but this third one is up in the engine bay slightly, and it's really hard to get to with a ratchet. So I was not able to do it with a ratchet. You might be able to do it with an open end wrench, but I had to resort to a mountain wrench, and these mountain wrenches really came in handy for me. So I've already put everything back together, but I kind of wanted to walk you through what I wasn't able to film because it was just too cramped in here to get that third bolt out that's behind this brace that I've already put back. But basically, you're going to need both your hands. You're going to have your right hand on this side holding the mountain wrench or the open end wrench onto the bolt head, and then your hands got to go through this area right here. Remember, that bolt's already been removed, but your hand's going to go between the drive axle and into that little cavity right there. And you're going to be doing all the work up inside the engine bay with your two hands, one on the right, one on the left, through the engine bay area right between the drive axle. It's really cramped. There's no way I could film it. I got the mountain wrench and it was pointed up into the engine bay, and I held it on with my right hand onto the head of the bolt with my right hand, like I said, and then I was able to use my left hand to turn it counterclockwise to break the thing loose. And those mountain wrenches have a swivel, so I was able to just swivel it back and forth until I could completely loosen it up and break it loose. Without the mountain wrench, I don't know if it's going to be very easy to do. You might be able to do it with a 12mm open end, but it's definitely going to be difficult. I'll leave a link below for the mountain wrenches if you don't have any. They're like $130 $30, something like that. I can't remember exactly, but definitely came in super handy trying to get that third bolt out. But you might be able to do it with an open-end wrench, so you don't have to have a mountain wrench. But that's how I was able to get it out, using my right and left hand up in this little cramped area behind the drive axle. A little difficult, definitely, but doable because I was able to get the whole housing out. Okay, this is what it looks like with the oil filter housing unit removed. You can see the two gaskets stuck to the flat flange. I guess this is the bottom of the block or the upper oil pan. I'm not sure which one, but it's stuck right there. Those need to be removed, and then spray it down with some brake cleaner and get it all nice and clean. I did the same thing with the oil housing unit itself, sprayed it down with some brake cleaner, got it all nice and clean, and you can see where the two gaskets are going to go into those grooves. And we're going to also look at these 3 bolt holes. You can see that that's the one we were working on. That's the hard one to remove. The other 2 are a piece of cake. But yeah, make sure you spray this down with some brake cleaner, get it all nice and oil free or as best as possible, and get those gasket areas nice and clean as well. Okay, let's talk about the gaskets themselves. I used the Mayhel gaskets from AutoZone, and I'll show you the number on the back right here. Also, Felpro has a set, and obviously your local Honda dealer has some as well. So whatever you want to choose, I think Honda's 13, this is like 11, pretty cheap. The good news is these gaskets only fit in one way. Just follow the contour of the groove and you'll see exactly how these gaskets are supposed to lay. Then you can just put a bolt or 2 through these 2 holes and then very carefully, place it back up onto where you've removed it, and then lightly thread those bolts in to hold those gaskets in place. Okay, now we've replaced the oil housing filter gaskets. Let's go ahead and look at the old gaskets and see if we can see exactly what's going on with them. You can see right off the bat that there's a lot of micro cracks on the inside of these gaskets, and over time they've just completely flattened out, as you can see from the side view, and they started to crack. So basically they just lost all of their elasticity, and they completely flattened out and failed. Obviously, this is a weak spot here for the Honda CRV. I've never actually had to change these gaskets out on any other car. I have changed them out on a Nissan 350Z only because I was already in that area, so I swapped them out, but I've never had them fail on any other vehicle. So this might be a little weak spot for the CRV. There's not many weak spots. It's a solid platform. I really like the Honda CRV, but after 150,000 miles, these things are going to fail. The operating oil temperature for the Honda CRV is between 185 to 210 degrees, and apparently these gaskets just can't take that for more than 140, 150,000 miles before they fail. So, now you know, and it's not that hard. It's a pretty simple job to do, and the part's cheap, so that's the good news. So hopefully this video helps you out. If it did, leave me a big old fat thumbs up, and until next time, you know what to do. Just keep on repairing.